So living in, a quote unquote Navy town, there's a ton of vernacular that no one ever understands if you are a civilian. Here we are today with Paul Robinson, the Executive Director of Rise, and someone could probably come up with a ton of different acronyms for what Rise is. Is there one in there? I don't even know that answer. Is there? There isn't.
No, that was my first executive decision. No acronyms, even though everyone thinks it's an acronym because the first letter is R and we're all about resilience. So no acronym. No.
Oh man, what a disappointment.
That's the first question. There you go.
I got nothing else. We're done. Show's over.
50 seconds. It's a new record. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Sure. Well, thank you for the invitation. Glad to do it.
Did you come up with the name then at all? Did someone else come up with it? How's the whole thing going?
The story behind this, this whole process was Rise was born out of a grant. Well, even before that. So Hurricane Sandy, as everyone knows, was a major hurricane event that left in its pathway a lot of damage to a lot of major metropolitan centers. And after that, the government through HUD put up a large amount of money. I think it was about $1 billion as part of a competition, the so-called NDRC, National Disaster Resilience Competition, for states to propose areas that they wanted to protect, that needed protection, resilience type protection from flooding, from the rain, from the ocean, from rivers, that sort of thing. And long story short, the Commonwealth of Virginia won the third largest grant behind New York and New Orleans of $120 million. It was the only project that was fully funded. The others were funding to go to other projects. In that proposal, it was also unusual in that what was also proposed was this idea of, instead of spending $120 million on traditional resilience infrastructure like pumps and pipes and berms and that sort of thing, there was some money, $5 million was put aside for something that they called the Coastal Resilience Laboratory and Accelerator Center, which became RISE. And the idea behind it was to develop some new ideas. Instead of the traditional resilience infrastructure is expensive and takes a long time to put in. Maybe there are things that can be done quicker, maybe things that can be done more effectively, maybe cheaper, you name it. But if this was a way to use our local area's threats in terms of the flooding environment as a coastal community and come up with some new ideas, some new innovations, diversify the economy, grow some small businesses. And so as I started up Rise in 2017, we had to figure out how we were going to do that. And one of the first things was to get to the answer to this question was, what are we going to call it? Didn't want another acronym. Didn't want to call it the Center for Resilience and the Laboratory Acceleration Center or whatever that was. So it became Rise.
Got it. And that was 2017. 2018 is when you kicked everything off. So talk to us about the types of businesses that you're looking for. How many businesses are you working with at any given time, and what that process looks like?
So I'll sort of circle around this to give a little bit of background of how we developed our process. So I'm an aerospace engineer by background, and my prior company commercialized some technologies for the aviation sector in aviation safety. So I came out in the mid 2010s, 2015 thereabouts, with some experience of commercializing technology, how to develop that technology and how to sell it, and who your customers were, all that sort of thing, and to a successful conclusion. So I come to that with understanding what a small business needs when they are developing new ideas and new technologies, and what their what the really rough spots are and where they need help, and the best way to, or the best way to get through what is often called the chasm, which is where you've got a good idea, you've done a little bit of research, but you have to get to the next paying customer. So I came to the whole process with that kind of a background. So we had to figure out, using government money, how do you build something that helps companies grow, demonstrate their capabilities, demonstrate their solution, and go on to other and larger markets. And we came upon, we teamed up with an organization out of MIT called Solve, and they were building a challenge program. And the idea of a challenge is that you don't propose solutions, you propose the problems. And one of the things that our region's very good at, the cities are really good at, they know what their problems are. They know where the flooding is. They kind of know why it floods for the most part. They know what some of the other problems are in terms of affecting utilities and buildings and people and that sort of thing. But they don't know what the solutions are. So through the challenge process, we built up the program that we could source the problems that our local community had, along with some pretty significant data to back it up, that we could post out there and say, look, these are the problems. We want you to solve them. Tell us how you're going to solve them, as well as tell us what your business model is and what your business plan is. Because we need to know, if we're going to give you money, this money has to, it's not an R&D project where you just do it and move on. We want to know how you're going to grow the business. And so we built that. So it's sourcing the problem. It's identifying the problem. It's sourcing it out to the community, getting their submissions, and then we go. Once we get that, we select them, and then we go on to another few steps in the process.
And they don't necessarily need to be Virginia-based companies, correct?
No, in fact, we're at about 20% of our companies are Virginia-based, which I think is pretty good. We're up to about 30 companies now. I say about because we just closed 2 more challenges where we've added companies, and we're right in the process of putting out the contract. So these numbers they're about right, but we're just growing in that way.
I think something that's interesting is, and I learned of this, obviously I've done Start Norfolk, and Tim's been a part of Start Peninsula for, I don't know, 10 times now, Tim. I don't even know how many it's been.
Yeah.
I did 5. And usually it's, hi, I'm a company. Here's a problem, I think, and here's my solution to the thing. And then at some point I learned of this thing, maybe 2014 timeframe, where there were big businesses that were having big problems, and big business can also be a big city, I would assume. And they were doing this thing called reverse pitch, where they would get really smart people in the room and they would say, hey, here's our problem. We'd like to help you in some sort of way. If you can figure out the solution, now build it. And it sounds, that's kind of like what the MIT challenge is in this world, where it's like, here's this big problem. Why don't you guys fix it? We'll fund it if it makes sense. Am I out of bounds there? Yeah.
No, it actually goes back all the way. The challenges started with one of the earliest, most famous one was the Orteig challenge that Charles Lindbergh won. 25 grand, nonstop, US to Paris. Okay, and there were quite a few people that didn't make it literally, but so he won it. He won 25,000. So the idea is you throw the problem out there, and that's the sort of the challenge idea. MIT helped us with awareness and helped us getting it together. But our partnership with MIT was to build their and our resilience challenge piece. So this model has worked really well. Also because our local cities are really, really helpful in allowing the companies through us access to their infrastructure, and it's uncommon in other places. It's done in other cities, but the level, because we're a smaller community, we can get access to the cities, and the cities open their doors to us. It's really hard for a new company to show up in let's say New York or Boston, and say, I got a really good idea. Can I get access to your storm drains?
I remember some of, just over the years, the number one thing that I think people talk about being as an issue is, oh, I need capital. Oh, I need a teammate, something like that. Actually, I think it's access to the thing, right? And I remember when all of these other programs had started and you got these big businesses associated with it, but I'd come in and be like, hey, I appreciate that you're supporting, but when that company needs your access, are you going to give it to them, or are you just going to, quote unquote, support?
Yeah.
And honestly, what I found is that a lot of these companies weren't willing to give that access, and it was interesting. I believe Sony founder Tim, what's his name? It was Gary Warren from Ivy Watch. Who said this, actually. Gary Warren at I think my last day of the startup community address said, we need more access to this stuff. If I can go to the Cleveland Clinic or the Mayo Clinic and they're giving me all this access and I can't get it here, like, that's a problem. I should be able to do that. And so it's great to hear that the cities are opening, their treasure chest of access, because, you want these companies to survive. You want these companies to thrive. And it's like, give us access to this thing.
It's huge. And it came from a lesson I learned in my previous aerospace life, where when we were developing our technologies, we had the opportunity to take them to an airline. And those were guys who they were flying airplanes and flying passengers. They were operating. They had no time to sort of dabble in certain things. So we brought the technologies there, and the feedback we got was what took the technology out of the sort of the R&D sector and made it real. And we identified value propositions that we had never considered before, but that's what made it successful. Is the operational piece, and that's what we translated. We really pushed hard to translate that to the cities. So we got access to the stormwater department, to the resilience office, to the GIS department. That is so important. That's what makes these things real.
What so the companies that you're working with, is this pre-COVID? Was this a virtual type of accelerator program, or did the companies come and did they do this in person? How was that set up?
Well, so let me just address the accelerator piece. So after we've selected the company, we provide them obviously with money, and the monies are either in the form of a grant or what we call a revenue-based loan, which means we get paid back when the company gets to revenue, which was another thing I could not get to with my own company before, but I would have killed for it.
Sure.
So or some mixture of the two. But we also, if the companies needed some help in identifying their minimal viable product or their customers or the market or whatever, we help them get that. And we do it through 757 Accelerate or ICOR or Open Seas or organizations like that. So we broker it out. We don't do that acceleration, and then we let the company go. They have to demonstrate their product in this region. So in the past, but pre-COVID, they were coming here to set up and run their projects, and even now they're starting to do more and more of that now that the pandemic's changing a little bit. But they have to be here, and we do encourage them strongly to set up a presence here, to hire local companies, local people, and we do as much of that as we possibly can. It's not always realistic for a company to pick up from let's say Seattle to come here for a couple of $100,000. We're offering between $200,000 and $300,000 typically. That's not going to get a whole company to get up and relocate, but we offer them space here, and we get them involved with the local community as much as we can.
And during the selection process, do they have to have an MVP, or do they have to have a customer? What's the determining factor for them to be accepted?
So what we do is we take their submissions with the work, with the business plan and their work plan and their technical solution, and it goes in front of a panel of 5 judges, and we assess them for the strength of the team. All the standard stuff. Mm-hmm. The team, innovation, their work plan, their market analysis, and if they need help with the market stuff, we can say, okay, we don't give them one big check. Okay, we can say,
Milestone.
okay,
milestone based.
yeah, absolutely. And we'll say we'll allocate to you $200,000, but the first $20,000 you have to go through 757 Accelerate. You have to customer discovery, etc. And when you've done that, and you've written up your market analysis and redone your financials based on that, see where you are right now, and then you can go on to the next phase. A couple of times we stopped it at phase one. It just has not worked out, and I see that as a success.
Sure,
I would agree.
Of the process.
When I was doing hatch classes cohorts, I say I wish. I don't like to wish anything, but had I done things differently, I think I would have done milestone based, because you do learn those things. I remember we had written a check to a company that literally everything on the checklist went through, and it was like, this is going to be perfect. And then hit one roadblock, and they were like, I quit. And I'm like, we're out all that cash.
Yeah.
And this is bonanzas. You said your company couldn't get to money when you were a founder of a company before. I'm interested in just how that is brought to the table and what you're working with these companies, because a lot of times people are like, follow this process, right? And you do all this paperwork, or you do all that stuff, and at the end of the day, it doesn't actually lead to money. And it sounds like that was the problem that you did. Where's the correlation of those two things, so that this thing that was such a challenge for you and a challenge for a lot of businesses can actually see success?
So, so not to dwell on my prior experience, which was, the school of hard knocks, but it is for everyone in the technology or the development business. You learn from experience, but it really turned out that the company we ended up concluding a deal with was not the one that I was out there pitching to, and it was someone sort of interim. It was an organization who had the customers that I was out there pitching to. So and when I look back at it, and when we started talking, it made so much more sense to everyone for them to absorb our capability to then go out to the broader aviation community. And I see that in the same sense as many of our companies now, is they may be out there pitching to the municipalities, and in many cases that makes sense. But in some other ways, it makes sense to pitch to the architectural and engineering companies that already have contracts with the municipalities, that then maybe it expands their capabilities to make them more attractive. But in the end, it still gets paying customers for the technology. So that's part of the assistance that we give the companies if they're not sure, or if they think their best way of making a lot of money and attracting investment is to go through the municipal procurement cycle, which can be very slow and burdensome for a small company. Then organizations like 757 Accelerate or ICAP or these types of organizations can help them think through, well, maybe there's another group of people that I need to partner with or form a strategic alliance with.
Just to piggyback that real quick, that can be for investors, your founders, so many other things as well. And so that mindset, don't just go after the thing that might make sense or could be making sense. I think so many people are just like, oh, I'll work with that person because he has a skill set that I want, or he has the check that I want, where it's like, can they really move the needle the way that you need it to? So I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, I think that, right now, this is such a time where the market is totally coming towards you. Climate it's a big thing right now. Hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. I think I just heard earlier this week that $1 billion of venture money is now going into climate. How has that affected you? Because truly the market's coming towards you. Are you picking up a lot of steam right now? Are you still in the early stages of that? How has that gone for you?
So it's a good question. A couple of things is what we're seeing this in a couple of areas. One of the things, and this sort of was in our plan, but the money that comes to the Commonwealth through there's a multinational, a multi-state program out there called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and it's a way of raising money from coal-fired power plants. It's a carbon offset, and it's real money. And within the Commonwealth of Virginia, $228 million has been raised through this RGGI fund and put in an account in Richmond. Half of that goes to the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, which is a Virginia fund that funds municipalities to do resilience work. That could be coastline protection. It could be any number of things, but focused on resilience types of efforts. And our goal, that money doesn't come to us, but our goal is to help the companies that we've funded get in the pathway for that funding to help communities get money from the attract money from the Flood Preparedness Fund, and then have these new ideas that can make the dollars go further. And we've been able to do that in a couple of cases, and we want to do more of that as we go along. So the money's not coming to us, just to be clear, but we're helping direct the companies to the municipalities who can then get that funding, and it gets the bigger projects. That's one way. The other way is we're building a network of investors nationally and globally who we can help our companies get ready to go out to them to seek their next investment. Already, of our companies, 6 of them have raised as partly due to us, but I would not say that it's all of the entire reason is because they're in our program, but because of the work that they've done with Rise, they've raised over $32 million in additional investment. So there's money out there. There's money that people are willing to put into this type of work. As you say, we want to do more of that, and we want to do it by demonstrating. We demonstrate here, and then help them get to both other cities, because we're trying to build a city network for our companies and investors. So we're trying to help them along the way there.
Well, I'm sure that our boy JCal is listening to the show. So if Jason Calacanis, guest 100, they recently, him and his co-host Molly Wood, they just initiated their climate syndicate. And so every Sunday, they release their podcast. Molly does an interview with called This Week in Climate Startups. Really fascinating stuff. So I'm eager to be part of that climate syndicate. But the challenge that they're facing right now is there's a lot more money than there are companies to fund. So here you've worked with 30 different companies. I totally intend to clip this part of the show and send it over to Jason and Molly, because this is, and I was telling Zack before when we were trying to coordinate getting you on the show, that this is a real hidden gem, not only in Virginia, but throughout the United States. And like I said, the market's really, really coming towards you. And I think that you're really well positioned for a lot of successes.
We welcome, call me. My email address is around there, is on there somewhere. So yeah, we're open. We are not just trying to do our own little fiefdom here. We are open to spreading the joy, spreading the wealth. That's a measure of our success. So we're very interested in that.
With that challenge in mind, and there not being a lot of companies to pick from or to invest in, I mean, is there a reason? Is it just because people historically haven't wanted to work on climate type of thing? Like, is there a reason there?
So a couple of things is what we found is our first go around in the challenge was a bit of an uphill climb. We got some good companies. We also got a lot of very, very, very early stage ideas. But as we've built our brand, if you will, of the challenge, more and more companies are coming out. Now they're all at different stages. Some are ready to go. Some are folks who have already run a couple of businesses and they're off and running, but some are not. Some are focused on the technology. They've got great ideas, but they need some help just to get to the next stage, if in fact that's what they want to do. Or if they want to just stay in R&D, that's fine. We're not going to try and convince them otherwise. They've got to want to do it. So it's a number of different things. And really, the fact of it is, for a small company to raise $5-10 million or $20 million really changes the company, and it changes the work environment. It changes a whole number of things, and not everyone is in the right frame of mind to do that. And so, you know, it's a little bit of everything. But I think, as you know, if we can get the word out, that we start to get more and more companies and help some of those in the situation like I was in some years ago. What would it take to really, you know, get this thing to take off and move ahead? Then I think every little bit helps. And there's enough savvy investors out there to know how to get into all of this. And so
is that to say that those some of these individuals are good at their craft, but are not necessarily the business side of things, and so you need to have that.
And so some of them, you know, our judges look at them and say, you need a CEO. And sometimes the CEO at the time says, no, I'm the CEO. And so that's a different conversation. So, you know, it's not a way that everyone wants to go. I mean, everyone wants to be Mark Zuckerberg, but that's a real hard pathway, you know.
Doesn't he have people run the company differently though? I mean, didn't Justin Timberlake take it over for a little bit?
Well, I think that the other aspect of it too is when you have you have Chris Sacca, who is arguably one of the best angel investors ever, between him and Jason. But Chris, he retired, and he's recently come out of retirement, and he now has lower carbon capital that he has committed himself to un-F the planet. I think, and now Jason working with climate startups with Molly. So now you have these people that have helped grown hundreds and hundreds of companies, created dozens and dozens of unicorns. So now they can work with these companies, teach them the fundamentals that they need. They have the network, they have the resources to really make some successful things. And then you have, like, I think Stripe, it was announced yesterday that they just committed, I mean, Stripe as a credit card processing company, they just committed $100 million towards carbon capture. So, I mean, there's a lot of players really starting to jump into this game right now. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so we definitely want to be a part of that whole process. And one of the things that we noticed was we ran a challenge. One of the things we can do with our challenges, we try not to look for a specific solution, but sometimes we want a specific solution. And so we run a more focused challenge. It's a slightly different structure, but same idea. And we always noticed, and as soon as I started working with Kyle Spencer at the City of Zone's office some years ago, even before Rise, there was always a problem down here of at a high tide events, maybe wind-driven tide events and heavy rain events, the sort of thing you get between March and November down in our area here. And the flooding starts to not look like the traditional elevation-based flood maps that everyone has. And the flooding is, you know, especially with the heavy rainfalls, you don't know where the flooding is going to be. And if you're trying to get home from work or to work or whatever, it can be a really confusing and in some cases very dangerous time to be out there trying to navigate from A to B. So one of the concepts that we worked up with Kyle was this idea of tying in real-time flooding information, both from rain and tide and wind, in with a route guidance app for drivers like Waze. And we ran this. That's what the solution is that we wanted. We wanted to help drivers be guided around flooding. And so we ran this challenge and put it out there. And we partnered with Waze, and we partnered with a number of other organizations and local organizations, the ports, Centara, CHQD, ODU, etc. And we found a solution. And the thing went live last November within the city of Norfolk. And right now, folks that pull up Waze and are driving around the city of Norfolk will have real-time flooding information on their app. So that was a way that we could we want a solution to this problem. We didn't tell people how to do it, but we knew what we wanted. And we got that. And that's the first time Waze has been used in that way anywhere in the world. And we've had really good conversations and a lot of good attention on this local area, as it being a great test bed, because the city really had to help us out with a lot of stuff. And B, we can try new things, and we're trying to help the local community adapt to flooding. So our next challenge, we want to extend on that and try and address the big issues that affect us here and nationally and globally. And our next challenge is focused. It's not quite so sexy, but it's a big problem. We're focused on reducing flood insurance premiums and claims by 50%. Because right now it's very expensive, although that some changes to the National Flood Insurance Program are trying to alleviate the difficulties. But for the low to moderate income folks, flood insurance is expensive. And then on the other side, the number of claims and the amounts of the claims are driving the National Flood Insurance Program coffers into the ground. They were basically over $20 billion in debt recently, due to a number of different major events, but also just this sort of continual claims. Drive the number of claims down and drive the amount. So we're putting that out there. We're working with the insurance industry, and we want to bring the ideas here and do a demo program here. We're putting 500,000 up, and we're trying to raise more money to do that. But we're going to address the problem here. And we're bringing in groups from outside to come up with it. I don't know what the solutions are. I can sort of think of a few, and I don't want to say them, because if you do that, that's all you get. But I mean, there's a lot that can be done. And we're focused on it. We're going to launch that in the next month or two. And that one's going to run through the end of next year.
You've mentioned that. Is it the city of Norfolk? Is it the entire region? Is it a specific city that's helping? But I think historically, when you go to a government organization, you go to a specific municipality, they are really like red flags, roadblocks. They make it really difficult to work with them. Did something change? Like what has made this situation so appealing for these companies to be able to work in, so that they can get the access that they need to?
I think it's you're solving their problem, because we started with their problem.
But you don't think that because they pitched it as a thing?
Yeah, we go to them every year, or we're constantly saying, look, what's your problem? And we don't know how much water is in our stormwater pipes, or we don't know what's in our, we don't know what our stormwater system is doing at any particular time for a given condition. Well, so we brought a company in that put sensors in the stormwater. They put 40 sensors in the stormwater system, and boom, here's what it's doing, and here's what happens in a storm event, and here's what happens in a heavy rainfall event, and this is what's happening, and some of your pipes are 50% full on a sunny day. So we're solving their problem. So you can, we go back to them and say, you told us you got this problem. Well, here's a solution that we think. I mean, we check it out before we decide to fund the company, but we bring in them solutions.
And I would think, to add on that, you're probably bringing them solutions that doesn't require like really, really extensive infrastructure modernization.
Yeah. Because that's sort of the Army Corps type of project thing, where we're not that. We're not the new pump station or the new stormwater pipe. So we're helping you deal with what you got. And so it's sort of appealing that way. There is a cost to the cities, the municipalities to interact with the project, but that's we try and keep that to a minimum.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the sensor thing with storm water, storm drains. And I recall the city of Norfolk specifically, talking about their storm drains and the water drains always backing up, and the flooding due to that being smaller in diameter, I guess, piping. And so to actually get answers like that saying, hey, you're at 50%, and I guess I'm interested in what was the solution in something like that? What was it? Just repipe the city? Like how do they take that information? Hey, there's sensors in here. You know what it is. Like what do they do next?
So I think it's awareness of here's the situation now. Here's what the weather's going to be in 2 days, and put two and two together, and there's going to be a problem over here. And
because you do normally know where all the stuff's going to happen, right? I mean, those underpasses that are going to flood that people can jump into, like it's a deep end of a swimming pool. Then they land on a vehicle. I'm sure you guys have seen that. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. People think that they can float into those things, but it is cool to hear something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do without digging it up and redoing the infrastructure. But it's an awareness, and it's maybe there are some things that the city can do in terms of pumping out some of the storage areas that they have prior to a storm when they know that something's going to happen.
Sure.
So
it could be a win-win-win. I mean, instead of like building multi-million-dollar houses right on the water or businesses right on the water, I mean, it's okay if you put parks and running paths and biking paths so that when there is flooding, that's not going to wipe out buildings and houses and cost millions of dollars to replace.
So that's right. And part of the benefits of this storm sensor project has been that the area near Tidewater Gardens in downtown Norfolk is being redeveloped. And the information that comes from these sensors, which are distributed through that area, has helped the designers in that redevelopment. So they now know what is not working and what needs to be changed. So there is a way that the city then can take this information and say, we got to do this differently, or redo this, or as you say, like get away from the hardscape. That's one of the biggest problems in urban environments, is all of the hardscape, and then meaning impervious, meaning parking lots, really.
Yeah, they need grass so that it'll run.
Well, just as we were talking before we pressed the record button, we were talking about Langley Air Force Base, and Paul, you spent time there, and I spent time there, and it was just so pick a nor'easter or a hurricane, and it was always like, okay, this part of the base was just wiped out because it's literally 9 feet above sea level, and all we would do is just continue to pump money into the base and just repair what was damaged, as opposed to, and we know it's just going to continue to happen over and over and over again. And so that's almost like the definition of insanity, thinking that we would just repair this thing and then the same thing happens over and over and over again. Yeah, we got to do something different.
Yeah, but there are ways to, if all you're doing is paving over it,
right,
you're going to have the same problem. But if
exactly,
I mean, this doesn't sound very quick or high tech, but trees and grasslands, they're what can help out in stormwater management. Plus, they improve the quality of life.
Right.
So how is climate defined? Because I feel like it could be a lot of different things. Like when Tim, you're talking about the $1 billion in active capital into climate, and Paul, just everything with Rise. Like, how is climate defined in this setting, in this industry?
So we try and keep away from using any specific models or predictions. We know that we flood locally, and we know that the severity and the occurrences are increasing, but we don't really rely on any one particular model or prediction or definition there. And what we're trying to focus on, I don't mean to dodge the question, but we really don't. We don't look at all the different models. We know roughly what the problem is and what all the other coastal communities are going to be facing. So we don't focus too much on that, other than that it's an increasing it's a threat that's increasing in severity and frequency.
Yeah, and it all, so much of it ties in together, that I don't know. The whole thing's really, really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, one of the, there are significant problems, and part of the climate thing is not directly associated, but we see it all the time, is the level of plastics that we have everywhere. And I mean, obviously the manufacture of those contributes to pollution in many ways, but just the fact that you can't get rid of them, plus the fact that they're in our waterways, plus the fact that they block our stormwater system and they get in the way and they are unsightly and they're not going anywhere. I mean, there are a number of different ways, and litter is it's a resilience problem, because floatables, meaning plastic bottles and containers, gum up the stormwater system like nothing on it, like nothing else. They're big, they float, and they get stuck. And plastics are everywhere. So that's climate too.
Save the turtles, please.
Well, it's interesting, just in the sense of from an engineering standpoint, plastic was over-engineered in the sense of it doesn't biodegrade at all. It's just it takes forever. And I know that our family, we really, really try to limit the amount of single-use plastics that we use in our home. I mean, it's just to your point, Paul. I mean, it just hangs around forever and ever. And Zach, I mean, like, just even looking at, a lot of people focus on sea level rise with the polar ice caps melting. However, a new study that just started was about all the methane gas that is being released into the atmosphere, because once those ice caps melt, all that biodegradation of the plants and everything that has just been trapped under there for thousands and thousands, if not millions of years. And then when the ice melts, all that methane gas is being pumped into the air and is also a big impact on the climate.
So I would turn that around a little bit, because we could easily drive ourselves into complete depression at this point. But I go back to, you look back in time, and humans adapt. They really do it. Whether that's a good thing or not, that remains to be seen. But there's a story about Chicago back in the turn of the century, which was overrun by horses, because horses were the form of transportation, and it was overrun by horse waste everywhere, in basements, in piles, everywhere. Health hazard, quality of life hazard, big problem. And then in 10 or 15 years, that all went away. And the reason for that was the internal combustion engine. And all of that horse waste, all of the horse problem went away. Now we're talking about the internal combustion engine. So I don't have the answer, but humans have really, in many ways, they figure out how to adapt when they have to. And so, and I ask my kids about this. They go, well, someone's going to come up with something. And so, I hope they do, and I hope I can invest.
Seems like they always do.
Yeah, well, and I think that that would be one of the positive things about the positions you're in. I mean, and I know I love entrepreneurship because I love the optimism, I love the ingenuity, the different ideas that people come up with in order to change the world in their own specific way, and to run a program like yours. I mean, wow! I mean, talk about making an impact. That would be really, really cool to hear, listen, and learn about what the different things people are doing.
You're right, Tim. And the fact is, and one of the things I learned with my company is, you cannot be an entrepreneur. You cannot try and build a company on an idea and be a pessimist. You don't have that luxury. And so all of these people are, all the people in the companies we fund and that we talk to, they all are optimists. They all say, yeah, this is a problem. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the material that has all this nitrogen and phosphorus in there, and we're going to seal it in there and build an oyster reef or a living shoreline or something like that. We're going to so the carbon is sequestered, and so these are people who are optimists.
Is that something that you can questionnaire about? Like, how do you figure that out? Because I agree with you, right? But how do you pull that out of someone to figure out are they a pessimist or an optimist in something like that?
Well, you don't have to, other than read their business plan or work plan. If their business plan says, well, we're never going to solve this and we'll be out of business by the end of the week.
Okay, so is that saying worrying about your competition then?
No, because oftentimes they say, here's our competition and this is why we're going to be better, which again is optimism. Now, we have all seen the over-optimistic business plan. We all have.
Of course.
And we know what they look like. But fundamentally, I don't know how you write a business plan or build a company and attract people to work there and move ahead if you let yourself have the luxury of being a pessimist.
Yeah. And I think that
kill a company.
I agree. And I think that in terms of like with me, with the different founders that I work with, one of the things that I want to know right off the bat is what is your why? Yeah. And if you have a true understanding of what your why is, then that's what's going to get you out of bed in the morning when you're going through a dark time. And I always tell everybody that that if your why is because you hope to make a ton of money someday, then that's not the answer. Right. I mean, you're not going to raise money at the hopes of being able to make a lot of money, because as soon as times get really, really difficult, you're going to give up on that why and you're going to find a new why and try some other venture.
But I think, Zach, to your point, I didn't mean to be flip on it, but
please be flip.
Thinking about it, the sector we're in is all about optimism. It's all about there's a problem out there. This is how we fix it and make it better. Not all sectors are like that.
So is that the key thing then? This is how we're going to do it? Because I think I even tweeted that this morning about Kevin Costner and just like the whole Field of Dreams effect, where that aspect of business where people like I'm going to build it and it's just going to magically be successful, get in front of those things. It's like you have to know that path to some extent. Like where's the avenue on that?
I think it's understanding what the problem is and how much the problem is costing someone. And that, because then you can start to put some numbers behind this, and you can say this is like, for example, there's Virginia actually really is quite far ahead of most of the other states in many areas. One of them is the Coastal Resilience Master Plan that was being developed over the past years, and what the Commonwealth should do in terms of to make itself more resilient. That was a great piece of work that was done and still being used. But they also have things like the other part of the Chesapeake Bay nutrient credit program, which is a way that you can be reimbursed by credits by removing nitrogen and phosphorus, which is running off the land into the Chesapeake Bay. If you figure out a way to remove, and that causes algae blooms and all other sort of stuff, which is a problem. But through programs like that, you can then generate credits from removing the nitrogen and phosphorus from the bay and sell the credits somewhere else. And there's real money in that. There's not some Ponzi scheme, but that really is a way that you can make a difference in cleaning up the bay and raising millions of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, and to Zach's point in terms of the whole build it and they will come kind of thing, and then what you're talking about, one of the things that I've always scratched my head about is we all want to create there's all these sectors, in terms of if you want a Go Virginia grant, then you need to be addressing a certain sector. And the thing that, as I'm listening to all this, I'm like, my gosh, we're in an area right now where we can really prove to be a world leader in terms of climate, how to mitigate floods. I mean, I think New Orleans is we're number 2 to New Orleans in terms of flooding, in storm resilience of some kind. sea level rise, whatever the case is. And it's just like
they're lower than us by like 8 feet or something. Yeah.
But I mean, it's just like in terms of like a sector and an opportunity for us to really take advantage of. I mean, we don't have to build anything. Whether if we like it or not, we're here, and we've got to address it so we can be a world leader.
Well, address it or be underwater, I guess.
Right.
But you know what? Interestingly, I've traveled to a number of cities, large and small, up and down the East Coast, and I hear from a lot of them that they are the most exposed city on the East Coast. But that's okay. That just makes like a good market. You know, we come up with solutions here. There's other people out there who need the help, and it should make sense for them to adopt it.
Well, I hear problem, and I think that's an opportunity to pounce on. It's like if that's something that I'm in love with and I want to fix it, and I feel like I have the skill set to fix it, or the want to fix it, like I'm not going to complain about it. Like I'm going to jump on board with that, and I think that's what kind of jump started my career into kind of business. It was like, whoa, I like this. Like let's go.
Yeah.
So we want to own this. This region is threatened. We want to own it. And we want to own it by being the ground floor for these new ideas and to demonstrate, and then to go off and go to bigger and bigger markets while growing a community here that knows how to develop these new ideas.
What's the biggest challenge that you face to take that next step to be the most notable?
So, as a nonprofit, we can't really take advantage of the commercial success of the companies other than just to be repaid back from their revenues. So, funding to keep us going, doing more of what we're doing is really the biggest challenge. We've got a model that works. We've got a community out there that are coming to us, and we want to keep doing this. So it comes down to keeping the organization going.
In terms of developing talent, that's just always a struggle for everybody. Is the companies that you're working with, is there a talent shortage? I mean, because some of
them who are locating here have trouble finding the workforce that they need, and so we're trying to understand that better and to engage the local communities in understanding what that should be. We can only do so much in attracting the companies here in what we do. At some point, we have to hand it over. And the folks at the Hampton Roads Alliance have been really helpful. The economic development folks at the cities, really helpful in, we can just tie the people to the cities, and then they can say, this is what we need. We can't go out there and find them space, but there's people locally who can. So it's space, it's workforce, and that really are some of the biggest challenges to companies coming here. So it's a continual struggle for us, but we got help, we got support locally with that.
How does, in the same question that Tim asked, going to cities, going to organizations that know that it's a problem, you admitting that it's a problem, and hearing that, work shortage, I don't know if that's the right word, just talent gap or not having the talent. I mean, what directly are they doing to fix it other than just saying, we support this, we want to fix it? Because I mean, it's a problem. I mean, the whole Rise business was built off of problems. Because talking to the city of Norfolk, like what's being done? Because if people don't want to build that thing in this area, you like you said, you give a company $300,000 who's in Seattle, they don't want to move. What do you do to actually attract those people to do that, or do you just not worry about where they're from and you build it?
No, I think it does concern me, and I'm just not sort of the Constitution to say it's not my problem, because it is my problem. But it's not. I don't know what we can do other than just involve the city economic development.
Sure.
And it's a good question, Zach.
Yeah.
No, I just think that like over the years, sorry, Tim.
No, over time. I mean, so you have 4 years under your belt. You're in your fourth year right now, and you're almost going through the entrepreneurial journey yourself in the
Yeah,
sense of
yeah,
you just got to continue to focus on your mission,
Yeah.
continue to solve the problem, and over time you're going to become that center of excellence or whatever you want to call it. And then so you're building that density, and it's just going to take a whole lot of time and a whole lot of effort. And just like with most startups, they fail because they run out of energy, not because they run out of anything else. And we all have to work together and create it and make this the location for Rise.
And I remember saying this a long time ago. We don't push the word water enough, right? The core of this region is around water, right? And so whether that being the military, whether that being the ports, whether that being tourism, whether that being the growing microbrewery scene, and then even just climate in general, like water is the thing. And so it's not surprising to me that this is seeing success because it's around water, this thing that we just naturally have. In this case, the natural aspect of it is a negative, or there's a problem behind it. There's a challenge behind it. That is an opportunity to succeed upon, to fix and to solve. And so it's not surprising to me that water is working, in this world, because that's what it is, to Tim's point, like, it's there, like there's a problem, like let's go.
I think that the changes over the past 2 years of COVID have changed the way that people work. And I think, if you can live down in this area and get a salary, a New York salary or a Washington DC salary, good for you.
I agree.
I mean, that's very attractive.
Well, and not have to have a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City with 1,400 people, with $5,000
surrounded. I mean, we were complaining about jet noise. That noise in a place like New York City, where you got a 1-bedroom studio, the noise never stops.
No, that's not true. Jet noise has got to be worse. What's something we haven't talked about that you want to talk about, Paul?
I think we covered pretty much everything I can think of, but just we are completely collaborative. So I want to hear from anyone. There's no dumb idea. If people want to be part of our process, whatever that is, if they want to bring some of our company's capabilities to their region, or if they have a company and they want to know how they can qualify for our money, reach out. We're not building a fiefdom here. We're all about involving as many people as possible, as many communities as possible. So it's an open door, and that's what we've really been trying to work on and build over the past few years.
I dig it.
Yeah, me too. I wish you.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is
absolutely.
It's great to talk to you guys about this.
Really wish you continued success, and really whatever I can do to help you, you can count me in. And I mean, this is just something that's near and dear to my heart. So happy to help any way I can.
Thank you. Well, I'll take you up on that.
Perfect. So long.
Thank you, Zach. See ya.
So cheers.